Well, good evening from London. Welcome to Piers Morgan Uncensored. Reviews for Harry and Meghan's big-budget Netflix series have so far been less than kind, unimaginative, and frustrating, said Hollywood's Bible Variety magazine. So sickening. I almost brought up my breakfast, said the woke Bible, The Guardian. They torched what little was left of their relationship with the royal family and, what little was left, frankly, of their own reputations. Last week was mostly sycophantic. Oh, here we go again. Meghan Markle is back in the headlines, but not for some royal drama or philanthropic milestone. Nope. This time it's because her podcast just rubbed someone the very wrong way, and that someone is Piers Morgan. Yes, that Piers Morgan. The guy who's basically made a second career out of roasting Meghan like it's a full-time job. But this time he didn't just roll his eyes, he launched a verbal nuke on air, in public, and it was brutal. He looked straight into the camera and said, point blank, she was nothing like that. She didn't speak like that. Her mannerisms weren't like that. I know. This is all fake. Boom. This is all fake. Paps and journalists and media were following him all day every day. Suddenly Meghan's delicate podcast voice, her on tears and her carefully crafted soft mommy persona weren't just being questioned, they were being ripped apart. And it didn't stop there. Piers zoomed in, literally called out a tearless cry. Scene. Said her voice was so fake it made him want to jump across the table. And his words? Put my fist down your throat. Now, whether you love or loathe Piers Morgan, here's the truth. What he said out loud echoed something a lot of people have been whispering for months, maybe even years, that Meghan's podcast, the polished lighting, the emotional size, the oh-so-vulnerable tone isn't about authenticity. It's about control, image, optics, and two people like Piers. It's exhausting. I'm just going to say what I'm going to say, okay? This is a 2-hour trashing of our royal family, of the man, because the woman he says he knew before the tiaras, before the Spotify checks, before the Duchess dream was a different breed entirely. She wasn't softly whispering about full-body chills while her friend teared up on cue. She wasn't floating through conversations in a slow, meditative voice like she just finished a sound bath. She was, as Piers put it, a real hard-nosed LA girl. Sharp, direct, no nonsense. You know the type, hustling through auditions, navigating casting couches and cutthroat agents, holding her own in rooms full of men twice her age and half her respect. That was Meghan Piers. Cleanse until she wasn't, until she rebranded. I believe in freedom of speech, he says. I believe in the right to be allowed to have an opinion. If people want to believe Meghan Markle, that's entirely their right. I don't believe almost any, from hard-edged actress to soft-focused duchess, from elbows-out ambition to oh-so-soft enlightenment, from what's my line to I'm just really proud of myself. I'm getting emotional. And look, if you've listened to her podcast or even a clip, it's not hard to see what he's talking about. The interview's always with friends. The story's always circling back to her. The tone always emotionally calculated. In one episode, she's supposedly makeup-free except her hair is professionally blown out. Her lighting's red carpet ready, and somehow she looks more glum on a Raw podcast than most of us do on wedding days. And then, there's the crying. Let's talk about the crying, because Piers really went for the jugular on this one. He claimed she was crying on the podcast, but when they zoomed in, not a single tear in sight, not one, not a dry eyes high. Drama, that's the accusation. And here's where it gets spicy. Old footage surfaced of Meghan on a Suits promo shoot joking that she could cry on command. Left I go, she said, snapping her fingers and summoning a tear like she was ordering room service. Up to saying, I think of them as sort of emotional terrorists. The royal family wants me dead. Americans feel like Prince Harry is sometimes an emotional con artist who fabricates, and so now, every emotional moment on her podcast is getting double-checked, screenshotted, scrutinized. Did the tear fall? Or was it left I go all over again? The doubts aren't new, but Piers just threw them into the spotlight like gasoline on a bonfire. And just when you thought it couldn't get more awkward, enter the gift basket. Midway through a podcast episode, a photo pops up, a sweet thank you gift from Meghan to her guest. Lovely, right? Except the card is signed Her Royal Highness, the Duchess of Sussex. What? You mean this one that says Meghan's Gift Vicky on it? Oh no, you made me another one. You're so sweet. Of course I made you another one. Oh my gosh, and then chili oil. And of course Archie's eggs. A little note and all, though it's so beautiful, all of our harvest. You make your own chili oil. We are using this today, okay? And I love Archie's chick. I know that's a title she was supposed to stop using. Remember the whole we're stepping back from royal duties thing? The British press didn't forget, and neither did the internet. To critics, that signature was a smoking gun. Proof that even as she complains about royal restrictions, she's still clinging to the status when it suits her brand. She wants the glam, not the grind. The clout, not the crown. The Duchess without the duty. And that, according to Piers and others like him, is the real issue. You know, you can't be like these people were so mean to us and poor us, and we don't want all this attention. And then let me write a book about how much we don't want attention. Because every time Meghan tells the world how hard she has it from school drop-offs to podcast recording schedules, it just doesn't land the way she thinks it does. Especially not when you're living in a Montecito mansion surrounded by staff in custom Dior complaining about your calendar when the average mom is juggling 3 jobs and carpool. It's not relatable, it's offensive. And that's the undercurrent running through Piers' rant, that this whole "I'm just like you" act is starting to fall flat. Even Meghan's fans, some of them, have started raising eyebrows. Because it's one thing to share your truth, it's another to rehearse it so hard it loses all its soul. Piers didn't just attack the podcast, he questioned the woman behind it. The evolution, the transformation, the deliberate switch from scrappy actress to emotional duchess. And maybe the scariest part of all, he's not the only one saying it. The louder Meghan speaks, the more critics point to the script. They say it's all strategy, all manipulation, all branding. And once that seed is planted, every moment from the tearful pause to the whispered thank you feels like part of the show. A show where Meghan is writer, director, and star. And the rest of us, we're just the audience watching, guessing, and wondering what's real and what's just left. Now, Piers Morgan, here's where things get even messier. Because while Meghan's defenders are out here shouting misunderstood, the critics are putting receipts on the table, and one of the loudest voices dragging those receipts into the spotlight. Piers Morgan again. He didn't just critique Meghan's podcast style or tone, he dissected it like a surgeon with a grudge. And the piece that really set him off? That infamous interview with G. Carn, Lima Meghan's billionaire bestie? It was pitched as 2 powerful women, getting real, raw, and vulnerable. But what we got looked more like an airbrushed sleepover with a built-in camera crew. The lighting was flawless. The hair was effortlessly bouncy. Meghan looked less like she was having an emotional breakthrough and more like she was prepping for a Vogue cover shoot, and the tears still nowhere in sight. One close-up moment of her voice cracking, and social media sleuths went zoom and enhanced like it was CSI, Sussex. One viral tweet read, "I stared at my screen for 30 seconds, and still didn't spot a single tear. Netflix must be adding CGI next season." And while Meghan was out here talking about full-body chills and how emotional she felt, Piers couldn't take it anymore. He unloaded on air, saying point blank, "She's a malignant narcissist, who can't get enough of herself." Dramatic, absolutely. But was he the only one saying it? Not even close. Because right after that podcast dropped, the criticism flooded in. It wasn't just about her tone or the polished production, it was about the subtext. The message she kept sending again and again. Look at how far I've come. Look at how much I've overcome. Look at me. Which is fine. Everyone loves a good comeback story. But critics felt it was all being presented through a lens so carefully controlled, so micromanaged, that it stopped feeling authentic and started feeling market-tested, like every emotion had to pass through a PR filter before being allowed on air. And remember that raw, unfiltered shot of the gift basket with the HRH label? Yeah, that wasn't helping her case. Critics saw it as the ultimate contradiction, preaching about escaping the toxic royal institution while simultaneously using its title as a personal branding tool. Piers Morgan went full throttle on that detail. "She's not allowed to use that title anymore," he barked. "So why is it on her stationery? Why is it on her gift baskets? Either she's out or she's in, but she can't keep playing both sides. Like she's royalty when it suits her, hand victim when it doesn't." And that's where things hit a deeper nerve. Because this isn't just about voice tone or podcast style anymore. This is about identity management, about trying to sculpt a public image so precisely that it starts slipping into performance art. Meghan says she wants privacy, but she's got Netflix cameras in her chicken thank you notes. People don't know which version to believe. And when audiences feel like they're being manipulated, that's when the backlash goes nuclear. Now let's not forget the crying on command controversy. The moment Piers brought up that old Suits promo where Meghan bragged about her ability to shed a single tear on cue, specifically from her left eye. Mind you, it was like adding gasoline to the fire. "Left eye go." She snapped her fingers and, boom, instant waterworks. The clip wasn't even 2 minutes long, but it lived rent-free in people's minds for weeks. So when Meghan sat down in her documentary series, tilted her head, got that glassy-eyed look, and one lone tear rolled down, well, you already know what happened. The internet lit up like Times Square. She didn't cry at the Queen's funeral, but she cried because someone called her strong and beautiful. Ouch. Even people who didn't normally care about royal gossip were now asking the big question, is anything we're seeing from Meghan actually real? And here's where it gets even more layered. Because Meghan's not just facing criticism, she's facing strategic criticism, calculated takedowns. This isn't random Twitter noise. This is people like Piers Morgan leveraging their platforms, their connections, and their long-standing grudges to dismantle the Markle media machine brick by brick. And let's be honest, part of this goes back to the infamous falling out between Meghan and Piers himself. If you remember, he claims they had a friendly connection once. They exchanged messages, had drinks, and then radio silence once Harry entered the picture. Piers says she ghosted him like a bad Tinder date, and ever since he's had her name permanently laminated on his hit list. So sure, there's personal salt in his criticism, but the traction he's getting, that's coming from the fact that lots of people are seeing the same patterns. Take the podcast episode again. At one point, Meghan talks about being overwhelmed with pride and getting emotional while talking about her guest's journey. She says, "I'm just so proud of you, I have chills. I could cry." Except she didn't. No tear. No actual breakdown. Just a perfectly timed pause. A soft blink and boom. Cut to commercial. It's that level of cinematic emotion that feels to some fake, like it's been storyboarded as one YouTube commentator put it. Her podcast isn't a podcast, it's a trailer for her next media venture. And it's not just Piers sounding off anymore. Public trust is eroding, slowly but visibly, because when every episode follows the same pattern, praise Meghan, compliment her bravery, shed a tear, then loop back to how hard her life has been, it starts to feel less like conversation, and more like a one-woman PR loop. There's no spontaneity, no vulnerability that doesn't feel pre-approved. Even the guests, no matter how famous or powerful, seem reduced to backup singers in Meghan's lead vocal. It's all orbiting around the same central idea. Meghan the survivor, Meghan the hero, Meghan the star. And when you've got someone like Piers Morgan watching that unfold, armed with years of personal animosity, access to media platforms, and a fan base hungry for royal drama, it's like handing a match to a man standing in a fireworks factory. He knows exactly where to aim, and Meghan's highly curated image gives him no shortage of targets. And look, there was a time when Meghan Markle commanded near universal sympathy. She was the outsider trying to survive the brutal British press, the American marrying into a centuries-old institution known for chewing up newcomers and spitting them out. People were rooting for her, but somewhere along the way, that underdog narrative twisted. Maybe it was the Oprah interview, maybe it was the Netflix documentary, maybe it was Harry's memoir. Whatever it was, people began to feel like they weren't watching a woman escape royal toxicity, they were watching someone use it. And when every public appearance starts to feel like a campaign stop, people tune out emotionally, or worse, they turn against you. Which brings us full circle. Piers Morgan may be harsh, even petty, but what makes his criticism dangerous is that he's echoing what a lot of people have already started to believe. That Meghan's not just navigating fame, she's orchestrating it, carefully, deliberately, and maybe, just maybe, dishonestly. So what happens when the audience no longer trusts the performance? What happens when the people who once cheered for you now feel like they've been sold a story instead of a truth? We're not done. In the next section, we'll explore how this fallout is affecting her future brand deals, why major media companies are allegedly distancing themselves from the Sussexes, and what insiders say Meghan is planning next. Because if you think this podcast backlash was the end of the story, oh no, it's just the teaser. So let's talk aftermath. Because once the noise from Piers Morgan's tirade died down and the social media storm began to settle, the real consequences started to roll in, quiet, strategic, behind closed doors. First up, Spani Now. This wasn't your average podcast deal. This was a multi-million-dollar contract pitched as the ultimate power play in the celebrity audio world. Meghan and Harry were supposed to be ushering in a new age of royal storytelling. Raw, brave, trailblazing. But what did Spotify get instead? A single season, some glossy episodes, a few headlines, and then nothing. No follow-up season, no massive audience retention, no buzz after week 3. Just that awkward silence that says, yeah, we expected more. I'm Meghan. Spotify is feeling the heat, and this is Confessions of a Female Founder, a show where I chat with female entrepreneurs and friends about the sleepless nights, the lessons learned, and the laser focus that got them to where they are today. And internally, sources say Spotify was already feeling the heat. One exec allegedly complained that the couple delivered content with no depth, calling the podcast all polish, no pulse. They wanted something with teeth, something that could compete with the heavy hitters. But instead, they got sound bites wrapped in silk, and the final nail in the coffin. That South Park episode, you know, the one Meghan and Harry weren't named directly, but come on, we all knew who the Prince and Princess of Canada were meant to be. Marching around with "We Want Privacy" signs while appearing on every talk show and dropping a memoir. It was savage, it was smart, and it was deadly accurate. Because it captured the one thing even Meghan's most loyal fans can't deny, the disconnect between message and behavior. You can't beg for privacy while filming your backyard chickens for Netflix. You can't criticize the monarchy while using your Duchess title like a promo code. You can't cry on a podcast while your face is perfectly lit like a Revlon campaign. And that episode did more damage than 1,000 think pieces. It broke through the PR barrier. It made people laugh at Meghan, not with her. That's when the brand starts to crack. When you're no longer inspiring empathy, you're becoming a meme. But Meghan, she didn't flinch, at least not publicly. Instead, her team pushed forward, dropping hints of new ventures. Rumors swirled about lifestyle brands, and new docuseries, maybe even a skincare line. There was talk of Meghan becoming the next Goop, a Duchess-turned wellness guru with a holistic, glammy empire. But guess what? Brands started backing away, quietly, cautiously. Because in the boardrooms of LA and London, nobody wants a spokesperson who comes with baggage, especially not this kind, not royal drama, not public backlash, and definitely not when Piers Morgan is still out there foaming at the mouth like a shark that smelled ratings. And it's not just the big brands. Even Hollywood insiders are whispering that the couple has become radioactive, that production companies are hesitant, that calls aren't being returned as quickly as they used to be. And the worst part? Meghan knows it. Because for someone who was once the darling of both American and British media, being iced out by the same machine that once embraced you is like watching your reflection vanish in a mirror. One source, close. 2. A former Netflix executive even said, she's learning the hard way. You can't outmaneuver Hollywood if you keep playing royalty and rebel at the same time. And let's be honest, Meghan built her second career on the premise of authenticity, the idea that she was finally free to be herself. No titles, no tiaras, just Meghan. Except, that never really happened, did it? What we got instead were layers, more branding, more control. Carefully curated vulnerability that somehow always circled back to the same conclusion. Meghan is misunderstood. Meghan is the hero. Meghan is the story. To prove something, to prove that you're enough, you have to prove that you're pretty enough. You have to prove that you're smart enough. You prove that you're a good wife, or a good friend, or... And I was like, I am just so done with ... Which is fine if the audience buys it, but what happens when they stop? Well, here's what. The knives come out, and they're not just coming from tabloids or talk show hosts anymore. They're coming from inside the house, Hollywood itself. Anonymous producers, PR insiders, former assistants, the whispers have turned into quiet warnings. She's hard to work with. She overcontrols the narrative. She wants total creative authority, but lacks the experience to back it up. That's the real danger. Not bad press. Not even Piers Morgan yelling into a mic. No, the real threat is the erosion of trust. When your own industry starts viewing you as a liability, your power fades no matter how famous you are. And meanwhile, Harry's stuck in his own whirlwind. The memoir backlash, the security fights, the court cases, and while he's doing his own emotional unpacking in front of every camera possible, Meghan is quietly recalibrating. Some say she's laying low on purpose, letting the drama cool. Others say she's regrouping for a new media move. There's buzz about a new visual project, maybe a cooking show, maybe a docuseries on female entrepreneurs. Something light, inspiring, real. But here's the catch. Every project moving forward will carry this baggage. This sense of inauthenticity, this looming question, is this real? Or is it just another Markle monologue? Even her Nigerian trip, which should have been a glowing PR win, came with controversy. Accusations of cultural appropriation, awkward photo ops, and most damaging rumors that the visit was organized more for Netflix than for diplomacy. Which, if true, only feeds into the same pattern critics have been pointing out for years. Every move is a media moment. End. Remember, public perception isn't just about what you say. It's about timing, context, subtext. When your podcast tiers are being fact-checked against old Suits interviews. When your gift baskets are being examined for unauthorized titles. When your lighting setup becomes a punchline, you've officially crossed from celebrity into spectacle. And Meghan Markle, whether she likes it or not, is now trapped in that space. Too faded to fade away. Too controversial to be embraced fully. And too polarizing to rebuild without a complete reinvention. But will she pivot or double down? Because here's the truth, nobody wants to say out loud. Meghan is brilliant at survival. She's not going quietly. She's not giving up the spotlight. She will reinvent, rebrand, relaunch. The question is, will the public still care? Because once you've cried wolf too many times, even if the wolf is real, people stop listening. They start laughing, and then they walk away. So what's next for Meghan Markle? That answer lies not in her next project, but in whether she finally does something no one expects. Stops talking and actually listens. But knowing Meghan, silence isn't part of the plan. So where does this leave Meghan Markle in the grand saga of celebrity, royalty, and relentless public scrutiny? She stands at a crossroads. And it's not just about her next career move, it's about legacy, authenticity, and whether the world will ever see her beyond the carefully crafted image. Because let's be real, nobody is born into the spotlight, expecting it to be kind. The glare is harsh, the lens unforgiving, and the internet's memory like a steel trap. Once you've been branded inauthentic or performative, that label sticks harder than any royal title ever could. And yet Meghan Markle's story is still unfolding. Her fans still defend her fiercely, saying she's been misunderstood, unfairly judged, and trapped by an impossible system. To them, she's a trailblazer pushing boundaries in a world designed to keep her in a box. Her critics, they're louder than ever, armed with clips, headlines, and a relentless skepticism that refuses to soften. For them, Meghan's saga is a cautionary tale about fame's double edge, how the quest for control can sometimes cost you the very trust you crave. And Piers Morgan, well, his explosive take wasn't just a rant, it was a mirror held up to a complex, conflicted public figure, one whose very essence seems caught between two worlds, the real and the performed, the private and the public, the authentic and the manufactured. His words still echo, sharp and unforgiving. This is all fake. But here's the thing about fame. It's messy, it's complicated, and it rarely fits into neat boxes. Maybe Meghan Markle is all the things Morgan claims. Calculated, strategic, media savvy, or maybe she's also someone trying desperately to rewrite her story on her own terms, battling a media machine that never gives her a break.